Good evening and welcome along to another live episode of Red Tinted Glasses. And Callum, we really need to stop getting our hopes up because every time we do get our hopes up, we go away from home and we just let ourselves down defensively and let the fans down.
I know. I mean, at least there wasn't 4,000 there, but sort of 1,500 or whatever it was traveling down on a Tuesday night. Let down once again, but I mean, we should know better now, really, shouldn't we? It seems to be fantastic home victory and then bad away performance, which seems to just be the case this season. Hopefully, we can sort it out after the break, but my confidence on that matter in particular is not particularly sky high.
No, and the worst thing about it as well is we spoke about how we needed to back up the victory over Hibs, and we really needed to kind of cement our credentials for third place in a way. And I suppose, with the greatest of respect to Livingston, maybe a bit of disrespect in the previous episode, I mentioned St Mirren being in there for the fight, but now after last night, we're bang level on points with Livingston. They've hauled themselves. You did say that they're not hammer throwing jobbers anymore, and certainly in that first 20 minutes, we made them look like Barcelona the way they passed through our team. It was slow starts have been our Achilles heels, as well as conceding from set pieces, and we did both in the opening 20 minutes. We're not learning, are we?
No, that's absolutely clear to see. I'd hate to bring it up again, but remember when Jim Goodwin said that fixing the defence was the easy part?
Yeah.
It seems to be the total opposite. Scoring goals usually not a problem, but no, as much as Livingston were very good, I think credit has to go to them for that. We didn't have to make things pretty easy for them, but I mean that Bahambula guy particularly looked bloody brilliant. We made him look like he was David Beckham on that right hand side at times. But yeah, well, it was just I don't know what it was. We were so slow out of the traps,
Mm.
and gifting them goals, like especially their first, just doesn't help our case whatsoever. And the only thing that sort of cheered me up was I have a first five guys in Livingston, first ever five guys. That made me feel a bit better about it. It was pretty good. So shout out to them. I guess that's where we are at this point.
No pie instead. I know everyone loves to hear your views on the pies. Nothing from the confectionery stand.
I did also have a pie actually as well, because before I'd went, all I'd had was a bowl of cereal, so that probably wasn't much for setting me up for the day, So I had a chicken curry pie, which was as dry as a bone, but it was all right. And then I had a ball roll, which was pretty decent, kept me warm, a bit of much gathered at the bottom for my liking. It was very salty towards the end, and I had also bought my pal a hot chocolate, which was just hot water basically, and that was pretty rubbish. So there's my confectionery. Is confectionery the right word? I don't know. My kiosk review. It was
Yeah.
it was all right. I give it a 5 out of 10 to be honest.
Who needs Kiosk Keith when we've got Kiosk Callum on the case this season? There's your I'm a celeb related pun here. Um, Callum, we spoke about it in the last episode. We expected a change to be made up, and if we were going to make one, it was likely to be at left back, and that was the only change that we did from Friday night, with Jack McKenzie coming in for Hayden Colston. No real surprise with the starting lineup, and to be honest, my confidence going into the game was certainly high. Given we were all but unchanged in that one expected position, and I don't know if you shared that similar confidence or naivety that we seem to adopt in terms of confidence, especially when it comes away from home. But for one reason or another, once again, we just failed to get going away from home. And it's good to have a lot of you with us on the show tonight, and we will get to some of the comments as we get into this dissection of the first 45 in particular.
Oh, God, I'm really not looking forward to it. Someone mentioned that Pie Talk's easier to listen to, so I'm finding it far more enjoyable as well. But well, the one change we sort of expect, and to be fair to Jack McKenzie, I thought he came in and played pretty well. Eventually ended up going off for Coulson, but thankfully McKenzie got through the game without injury on a pitch that could cause problems as well. But yeah, we didn't cover ourselves in glory at all. I mean, eventually we played a game that would, if we will play worse than that and still win games, But it doesn't help when you're giving a team a 2-goal head start and before you start playing.
No, exactly. And we spoke about as well, you can't go to a place like Livingston, a team like Livingston who have got an impressive home record this season, and especially when they can be so defensively resolute, you cannot afford to give them a head start in the game and give yourself basically an uphill task. And it's bad enough conceding one soft goal, but conceding a second in the manner that we did, okay, it's got VAR intervention, which we'll come on to. But Callum, Jim Goodwin, you said there, he said fixing the defence is going to be something easy. We spoke about it, I think it was after the Partick Thistle game, when I made the comment about the guy sitting next to me. His suggestion box was, can we work on what we do from throw-ins? Well, if there is a suggestion box down at Cormac Park, I'm going to ask that we can learn to defend fucking set pieces, because once again, we failed to deal with a corner, and Jack Fitzwater, making up for his poor performance at Pittodrie, where he got himself sent off in the reverse fixture, putting the home side ahead. The ball does go through a ruckus of bodies, but I thought we left Jamie Langfield's crisp pack of hands behind when he left the club. Unfortunately, Calarosa seemed to find them, because, he's really not covered himself in glory in that one.
No, absolutely not. I thought it at the time, given the fact that he got a hand to it, but I've been watching it back, it's even worse. I suppose, there is, I think there's 3 defenders going to close down Fitzwater's shot. None of them get anything on it, which, isn't very helpful at all. I think it was McCrory, Stewart and Scales, all 3 of them. None of them managed to block the shot, makes it through, and at that point, Roos got to get a strong hand to it. He gets down quite well, to be fair, but not enough on it, and it was far too easy for them. And I suppose Fitzwater will be happy to, right those wrongs, but I'm not happy about it.
No, I'm not happy. And as Paul Reiki says in the comments, the defence softer than a sticky toffee pudding. And, well, certainly Calarosa's wrists are softer than one anyway. But Calarosa as well coming out in the press pre-match saying, we hope we replicate our home form away from home, and instantly making a mistake. Now, no, I'm not going to sit here and blame Calarosa, because he has had some decent performances, but can we stop doing our talking in the press and failing to back it up? It seems like every time we have a big game or an important game, the players say all the right things pretty much. Jim Goodwin's done it a few times as well, and we just never go and back it up on the pitch.
No, and it just sort of makes things even worse, giving the media those sound bites when we then go and contradict ourselves by what they actually do on the pitch. But no, it is very, very frustrating. It wasn't even, just conceding soft goals. The majority of the first half, certainly the first half an hour, absolutely useless. There was Kelleros overthrowing the ball out when he was looking for, I think, Jack McKenzie as well, where he just threw it straight out for a throw-in, and he knew as soon as it left his arm, that's far too heavy for him. You'd expect if the pitch is going to be sticky, then it might have helped, but no, he was too powerful then, even for it. And then there was another time I noticed that Mackenzie and Stewart both went for the same ball at some point, and it was Anthony Stewart that eventually did deal with it. But immediately after, Jack McKenzie shouting at him, making this talking sign with his hand, which is not exactly what you want to see from a centre-back and experienced defender, clearly not communicating with his young and slightly more inexperienced fullback, and let alone the fact he's our captain. So that was just something I picked up on, that which is a bugbear of mine, and I think that sort of summed up the first half pretty well. The communication was bloody shocking. It was just, there wasn't even that much to talk about other than the goal, the penalty.
The thing is as well, like, people are saying, it was one of those first halves, but I don't even think it was one of those, like the damage was done in the first 45. That for me, the damage was done in the first 30, because once we went 2-0 down, we were the better team throughout. And, I was speaking to Ewan Rankin from the Talk Livy podcast last night, and even he was, bewildered at the fact that they went in at halftime 2-0 up, because we had our chances, the penalty, which we'll come on to. Shamal George makes a brilliant save from Majowski in probably his only other decent attempt on goal last night. Another thing I suppose we need to discuss as well. But it wasn't for the want of trying. And I suppose it's good to have Lee Sharp in the comments tonight. I mean, sorry, Jordy Dick. It was just one of those nights. Yes, it's been inconsistent, but Livy were always going to make it difficult for us. And I think that is spot on, because I think that game would have been more appropriate for Lee Sharp to come out and say it was just one of those nights, because it wasn't for the want of trying. We created umpteen chances in that second half in particular, but unfortunately, that counts for nothing when you shoot yourself in the foot in the opening 20 minutes and you gift the opposition a 2-0 lead. And I think Geordie's right as well. Livy were always going to make it difficult for us regardless, but it's going to be even harder when you give them that 2-0 advantage and a decent cushion to hold on to.
Absolutely. I mean, Liam Scales even mentioned it in his post-match interview. When Livingston get a lead, particularly at home, the majority of the time they're going to come away with points, and whether that be 1 or 3. This time it was 3. But it's just it's giving them a 2-goal head start at home when we know exactly how stuffy they can be, as well as at times playing football, which ultimately, well, they certainly showed in the first 30 minutes or so. But giving them that to hold on to. And then sort of we fell into their trap towards the end of the game as well, in terms of lumping it long when they've got like 5-6 big galoots sitting on the 25-yard sort of area, 18-yard box, just heading it away. That's their bread and butter. And we resorted to that, which, didn't help. But I suppose there's a couple more instances in the first half we best discuss.
Yeah, and I suppose before we get into that as well, Jeff Moran comes in the comments saying, slow starts, is that due to poor communication from the manager? Now, obviously the manager wasn't on the touchline last night, but, one thing I picked up on as well when I was listening to the Talk Livy podcast as well, because they recorded their episode pre-match on Tuesday, was, of course, Jim Goodwin also coming out and bemoaning the fact that the team were having to play on a plastic pitch and that they should be banned in the Premiership. Do you think that sort of mindset from the manager, that sort of negativity towards the pitch would have seeped into the players in any way? Or do you think it's, just maybe excuses coming in early, just it doesn't really set the right tone when your manager's already sitting on the back foot pre-game?
I suppose, but also I do agree with what he said. So I find it hard to really criticise it. To be honest, I don't think it would have played too much into anything, because plastic pitches are shit, aren't they? Let's be honest.
Yeah, there you go. You and Angus, you'll be glad to know we covered that as well. But of course, Callum, when you make a poor start and you concede a horrendous goal in the manner that we did, you want to not gift the opposition a second goal. Now, I'm not saying we did that, but VAR, of course, got involved after Aberdeen got on to a lovely break where Duke was rugby tackled to the ground by Nicky Devlin, subsequently booked. I'm thinking, right, good opportunity to whip the ball in. No. Mr. Dallas calls over Mr. Walsh to the VAR monitor, and a penalty is subsequently awarded to Livingston for self-defence. Is that the best way to call it? I don't know what Connor Barron's doing. I suppose it's a natural instinct, but I guess nowadays your hands cannot be in that sort of position. But we saw it last night with 3 penalties awarded for handball. We're going to see umpteen penalties awarded in a game if that's how generous they're being.
Well, I think it helps that Scottish teams defensively aren't quite the greatest. But in terms of the sort of handball rule, it's meant to be for deliberate, isn't it, really? And although Barron is moving his hand sort of towards the ball, it's natural instinct. It comes from about a yard away, maybe 2. Yeah. I don't think there's much else he could have done. It's annoying. His hand shouldn't have been up there, but you can't really blame him too much. What was annoying was the length of time it took to go and check for that. And then if a VAR check goes on for like more than 30 seconds, just go look at the monitor. And it took forever. It took an age to do, and they did it for all of them as well. So hopefully that'll speed up, but I can't really complain too much. And unfortunately, it was a good penalty from Kelly. By the way, absolute wand of a left peg on him, to be fair. The delivery's unreal from set pieces, but yeah, frustrating. There was a couple other things where Duke, the attempt Duke sort of got on the end of and just put wide, where it looked like he could maybe have been taken out. That didn't get checked at all.
That was after we were 2-0 down, wasn't it?
Was it? I don't know. My memories. I've tried to wipe it.
I think I know the one you're meaning. He went shoulder to shoulder with Obalai, I want to say, as he was like going through. I think that was actually outside of the box, and I think that's why it can't be checked as well, because
Yeah,
they can't go back and award free kicks, because I remember when Ross McCrory got booked for hauling back Joel Newbley, the Livy TV commentator, who, by the way, is probably the best away TV commentator I've listened to this season. Well, I mean, it's not a hard job to live up to when the last one you listened to was Rangers TV, but in
true.
all seriousness, a very unbiased opinion, and he was certainly a big fan of Duke as well, but he did say that Ross McCrory can't get away with fouls like that in the VAR era, but VAR is not allowed to advise the referee to book
Yeah,
players. So just a small point on that. But yeah, I did think there was a couple of incidents, and again, maybe it goes back to every time Duke goes down, he's expecting VAR to come in. But yeah, as Al Mitchell says, exactly agreeing with your point there, the time taken with VAR has to get faster. And especially the penalty that we got at the end of the half as well. I mean, how many times did he need to look that it hit Jason Holt's hand to
mm,
decide it was a penalty, especially if they're getting the one for the manner in which it hit Connor Barron.
mm. I
Um,
didn't even know what the one that we got was actually like who handed it at what point it was handed. I had no idea.
so it was when Leighton Clarkson volleyed the ball and it hit the bar. It hit Jason Holt's hand on its way to the bar,
Mm,
hence a penalty. But yeah, I mean, going back to Stephen Kelly, that was somebody that Ewan highlighted it in the preview as well, ahead of the game at Pataudry. Obviously, he had to be substituted after the red card at Pataudry, but he more than made up for it. And it's an interesting point you make about the wand of a left foot he has from deliveries, because that was a real difference in the first half, especially I thought from set pieces. You made the point actually on the last episode when we were reviewing the Hibs game, how you'd said about Leighton Clarkson's set piece delivery not being great, and then he turns in a performance like he did against Hibs. Well, I could see why you thought his set piece delivery
mm,
wasn't great, because a good few times, especially in that first half, I felt that his corners weren't even beating the first man.
yeah.
And I think for me, that was just adding to my frustration of the first half, that
Mm-hmm.
Livy were making everything look so easy.
Yeah.
And there was a time in the first half as well where McCrory, I think he passed the ball straight out of play, and then
Yeah.
Anthony Stewart did something unbelievably bad. And I think I put a thing on our Twitter account saying, if you don't laugh, you'll cry, because it is getting to that point where it is laughably bad. For how much we praised the defence after the Hibs game, it was just night and day, wasn't it, last night?
Absolutely. And it wasn't even just when they were particularly defending on the ball as well. It's so chaotic, um, at times. And then in the second half, Anthony Stewart's coming out from the back like it's no problem. And I just don't
Yeah,
understand the inconsistency between some of it. I seen with
I did
McCrory
enjoy your
as
tweet about
well.
him last night.
Thank you. But it's the inconsistency of it as well that's just horrendous. 'Cause at times we look solid defensively, and then we go and do shite like that. But no,
Mhm.
it was awful. McCrory, he looks more comfortable in the two. I feel like, whether that's because he's alongside, well, between Stewart and Richardson. I don't know if that's helping him too
Yeah.
much, but he does not look particularly comfortable in there, does he?
No, he doesn't. And, you know, we obviously looked a lot better second half when we made the change, Matty Kennedy coming on and possibly staking a claim for a starting position this weekend against Dundee United as well. But I mean, it's not really hard to look better than what was served up in the first 45 minutes in any case as well. But I suppose, Callum, again, going back to a couple of episodes, we were kind of asked what is the best formation? Should we be sticking with a 3-5-2? Should we go with a four at the back? Have we kind of generated these questions once again? But again, it's these questions probably coming back on the back of an away performance. And I think
Mm.
there was a comment. I'll see if I can find it. Who posed it? Because I did like it. Yes, it's from Jeff Moran here. Should we be a boring McInnes side away from home, sit in and hit on the break with Duke? Duke was very effective in that first half, and to some extent in the second half, kind of causing Livingston problems on the
Mm.
counter attack. Him and Leighton Clarkson, in particular, looking to use their pace to get in behind Livingston. Do you think we do just need to kind of go back to basics away from home and kind of sit in and just kind of grind out a couple of results? Because there is a problem when we go away from home,
Mhm.
whether it's a mentality problem, but is Jeff right? Should we just kind of go back to being a boring away side?
Probably. I think it's clear to see that playing the set up the same way at home doesn't work away from home for
Mm,
whatever reason. I think it's probably that, the home team expecting to have more of the ball and things like that, and we can't control things properly, and then they're more um, forward thinking and exposes the gap certainly in behind the wing backs mainly. But I think Jim Goodwin mentioned it as well that over the break they're certainly going to be looking to tweak things. Too, when it comes to being away from home, it does need to just be more organised, more simple. And I'd be all right hitting on the break with the likes of Duke. Certainly thought Matty Kennedy when he came on was brilliant. One of the few with pass marks, maybe Duke and McKenzie, the other two. I was quite
mhm,
impressed with Jack, but it just it wasn't. It's clearly not working for us, and thank God, it's a home game up next before the break. Because if we went off back of 2 away defeats again, I mean, I think was it 3 wins in the last 28 or something like that, maybe 30, away from home. It's horrendous
mhm.
form, and it's baffling at this point because things shouldn't be that different. Particularly, going to Dundee United when we've got just about the same amount of fans there as them, same as
Yeah.
Livingston as well. It
Mhm.
shouldn't be that different.
Yeah, I was just trying to make a note of the away games that we've been played this season when you were speaking there. Obviously, we've gone to Motherwell, we've gone to St Johnstone, and won, but we went to Dundee United, who prop up the table, lost. Went to Ross County, drew. Rangers and Celtic, you can maybe forgive defeats there in terms of the kind of expectation of getting a result. Obviously, we as fans expect us to do better than the performances put on show there, but in terms of going to the likes of County, Dundee United, we should be going there. Livingston again last night, with the greatest respect to Livingston, we should be going to these places and winning these games to have any sort of right to have a decent claim of third place. This is going to be what could ultimately cost us third place in the league. Now, when I spoke in the preview of this game, I said I was expecting 6 from 6 to give us a
Mm.
solid platform going into the World Cup break. And it was Jamie Davidson, I think, in the comment on the last video, he said, "Would I have taken a point last night? Would we have taken and then gone on to beat United? So take 4 out of 6." And I said, if we wanted, to be serious contenders for third, it has to be 6 out of 6. Although at 2-0 down after 20 minutes, I was like, I'll absolutely bite your hand off. Now that we've gone on to lose the game, Callum, obviously we're doing this live on Wednesday. Hearts have just kicked off against Rangers, St Mirren, playing St Johnstone tonight as well. Teams that can also continue to close the gap to us. Hearts can even go above us as well. But we've now kind of lost that kind of solid platform we could have had
Mhm.
on third place. And when you look at that away record that we've got, we go into we come out of the World Cup break with an Old Firm double header and a trip currently. Obviously, they've got St Johnstone tonight and Rangers at the weekend, both at home. They've only lost one game at home this season, and that includes a visit from Celtic, who they turned over, and also an away trip to Kilmarnock, who they themselves have only lost twice at home, a 5-0 scudding from Celtic, and then despite leading twice, last night's opponents Livingston managed to come out in the El Plastico derby. So it's not exactly great reading, and every game is a big game in this league, given how tight the league is from third to ninth, especially. But I just can't help but feel that the defeat last night and the poor start has now just heaped even more pressure and more importance to going into Saturday to get that 3 points.
Absolutely. I mean, if we don't win, and then we've got those two bastards to play after the winter break, we'll be looking too good. With the teams around us, it's all very tight already. They'll have plenty of
Mm,
opportunity to pick up points. Yeah, I think Saturday. It's quite early in the season, but must win. To be honest, I think
yeah.
especially going there, having to right the wrongs of our performance at Tannadice. I think we need to, first of all, shut Dundee United up. Second of all, just show some pride, get back on track. And I think if we go into the winter break on the back of 3 points, then everyone will just be feeling a lot better. But you go off the back of that into 2 defeats, and then you're not playing for a month, and the next 2 games is Celtic and Rangers. It'll be very, very worrying. So yeah, we absolutely need to do it, but it's at home, so we'll win every home game between now and the end of the season, and just lose all our away ones, and it'll balance it out nice and even.
Yeah, also a big fan of the fact that the club put out the email to supporters clubs last night on their way to Livingston about semi-final tickets, which I think, judging by when we have to submit our order by, looks like they will be going on sale next Friday. So I'm sure the club will be desperate for a win to make sure that sales start strongly, especially with us only getting that initial allocation. So yeah, an interesting couple of days coming up for the club.
Absolutely. People who win, then maybe some Christmas presents, a semi-final tickets. You never know, but I suppose we should probably get back to the Livingston game and talk about that bloody horror show of a penalty from Bojan Miovski.
I know, yeah, we went on a slight tangent of our away form, but it needed to be discussed and needed to be gotten into. But yeah, the Bojan Miovski penalty. Now, Callum, I remember I said to the group chat as well, 2-0 down, pretty much battered for most of the first half, and got ourselves a decent platform in terms of we were creating chances, we were putting Livingston under pressure, but the final ball, the final pass attempt was largely poor. You get the perfect opportunity with the last kick of the half to put yourselves back into the game, get the momentum going. Penalty, top goal scorer in the team, chance for Bojan to go joint top scorer in the league. You think, what can go wrong? Well,
the worst penalty of all time. Maybe not that.
Well, I don't know if was that worse than his first attempt against Hibs.
I don't know if it. Nah, to be fair, probably wasn't. But the fact is, both ones against. To be fair, even the one he scored against Hibs was perfect height for Marshall. Also, the one saved. Then that one against Jamal George, absolutely perfect height. Nowhere near the corner either. And Jamal George, by the way, couldn't even kick a ball last night, and we were far too slow in realising that in the first half, as well, in terms of pressing them or whatever. He pulls off a good save, and then what's even worse for me is the terrible second attempt as well from Bojan Miovski. I mean, it's such a tame header, and he had way more time than I think he realised as well. Given the fact
he could have taken it down
6 yards closer than everyone else.
But
it was awful.
Do you think, given his miss from Friday night, and obviously he goes up and scores the rebound just, do you think he should have taken the penalty last night? Would there have been a case for, obviously we get a second one, which Duke goes on to take. Was there a case that Duke, Leighton Clarkson, maybe even Yilbert Ramadani, I don't know. I saw a couple of people even say that Connor Barron took penalties for the under-18s. Was there a case that somebody else could have stepped up, or is that just something that would have been discussed pre-match? Bojan, you take it, doesn't matter.
I think probably. I mean, I don't know what the rules are over the Hibs one. That's something I was pondering. I presume he probably had to take the retake for that one. I don't know though.
I would assume so. Yeah.
Yeah. If someone does know, then please do let us know. But it was something I was thinking. My mate that I was with, Nathan, was not confident in any way, shape, or form that he was going to say he was going to miss David Luke, and he knew it was going to happen. He was right. I think there would have been a case. There would have been a case. In terms of Duke, when he stepped up for his second one, our second one, I wasn't confident with that because I think he's a bit of a nutter. He's not cool, calm, composed. And I did think about Connor Barron as well, however. So I don't know. I think there maybe would have been a case for that, but at the same time, you want your goal scorer to be confident in those situations. I guess as well, you don't want them to sort of shirk that responsibility, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose, but I just wonder now, going forward, if that will happen. If we were to get a penalty this weekend, and both Bojan and Duke are on the pitch. Who do you think takes one if we get a penalty this weekend?
Well, Duke's wasn't any better. He just leathered it, but I suppose at least he did find the back of the net. I suppose you've got to then go with Duke, given at least Duke absolutely made sure there was enough behind it, even if the goalkeeper did get a touch to it.
I mean, I've not seen the replay back.
No, sorry. Scratch that. Bring them both off and put on Ramirez for it. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, can we make like those like tactical, like, what was it? You get them in basketball when you just chuck players on and off willy-nilly. We'll just do that. I mean, was Shamal George actually that close? I haven't actually watched it back, the Duke penalty, but it felt at the time the lag that my perfectly legal stream had, I actually thought he'd missed it. But was it just too much power for George in the end?
I think, well, no, George definitely made contact with it. I think perhaps the fact it wasn't sort of like the centre of his arm or glove or whatever it was perhaps helped, but Duke's penalty, the power was certainly enough that got over the line. It was terribly placed, but he did just leather it, which I do kind of like, I suppose, to a degree. But had he missed it, obviously, would have been livid.
I mean, to be honest, had he missed it, it would have probably summed up our night. And I think
Majowski's 2 points at that point and get us all home.
Yeah, he might as well have walked off the pitch at that point, because Majowski's miss definitely summed up the first half, and maybe summed up his night and his away form, albeit unless we play at Fir Park. There have been people on social media calling for Christian Ramirez to get minutes this season. He got 7 last night. People saying that Bojan's maybe a bit tired and he needs a rest. Well, he's away to get a month off. So I don't see Jim Goodwin making any change for this weekend up top. Do you?
I don't think dropping Majowski would be a good idea at all. But in games like that where it's clearly not happening for him and you do have Ramirez on the bench, I would like to see him get more than 7 minutes, to be honest, give him more chance. And even when he did come on in the limited time he had, he created a perfect chance for Duke, which just sat up a little bit, which was frustrating. I just think give him more than 7 minutes. A game like that where it's clearly not happening, he's your main man, he's had an hour, 70 minutes or so. Yeah. Give Ramirez a little bit more of a chance. I know his attitudes come into question and things like that, but he seems to have his head down a bit more now. And he is a goal scorer, ultimately, given the goals he scored last season without taking penalties and with a fucking shite service as well. I wouldn't advocate dropping him, but I think giving Ramirez more of a chance like that in games like that where it's not happening for Majowski, then I'd be on board with that.
To be honest, I was a big fan of Jim Goodwin really rolling the dice last night. We spoke about him maybe being a bit stubborn in terms of game management or reluctance to change things, but ending the game with Bizawin, Majowski, Duke and Ramirez all on the pitch trying to find an equaliser. We can't sit here and say that we didn't try and go and find that, or at least the manager didn't try. And it certainly wasn't for a lack of trying that we didn't get an equaliser.
No, absolutely. I was a big fan of just throwing the kitchen sink at it, taking off Richardson and Stewart in the end. We had Scales because basically, effectively, Coulson was playing as a left winger. Likewise, I ended up being Kennedy sort of on that side as well. I just ended up with Scales on trying to hold down the fort. And I think he actually did all right. But I suppose credit has to go to him for that. I said we had plenty of chances. And on another day, we could have scored 4, 5, 6, if you include, the penalty as well. That miss from Duke, it was really well set up from Ramirez, I thought. And I think the one where Ramirez fired it in and Duke did well to get it under control, but it sort of sat up right before he hit it, which didn't help, and balloons it over the bar. And that for me really was the chance. And I suppose there was also the one where it was sort of cut back to him and Obalai out of nowhere makes an excellent goal line clearance, which I don't think Duke could have really done too much more other than perhaps lift it slightly. But
I wonder if maybe could have been a bit more power on it. I think I said last night he has to score it, but I think you're absolutely right. You've got to credit the last ditch defending, and you can't say Livingston didn't fight for that 3 points last night. You've got a keeper on one leg who somehow lasted the 90 minutes, and you've got players literally throwing themselves on the line. I think there was a comment earlier in the show as well about, none of our team kind of taking the game by the scruff of the neck in that first 45 minutes to kind of G us up. It was soft as shite, I think, as to quote you after Ibrox as well. But yeah, Duke had a massive miss last night, and I think it was more than one. There was the header as well that seemed to go in slow-mo past the post as well. That was unlucky, but there was 2 one-on-ones which I think he's got to do better with. It. He's got to be hitting the target with that one right at the death as well, and blazes it over the bar. Even Liam Scales himself as well. He has a good header either side of Shamal George. It's 2-2. It wasn't for a lack of trying in that second half. Unfortunately, we were extremely clinical against Hibs on Friday night. We just seemed to have the finishing ability of Hearts and Hibs when they came to Pittodrie last night.
Basically, and there was also McKenzie in the first half where I thought he hit the post, but I think Livingston did end up getting a corner for it as well. I think it was maybe a good save from Shamal George. But on Shamal George, I mean, it was very good, but I mentioned earlier, we were far too slow, first of all, in realising that he's not what a line to stand on right now, basically. And in terms of pressing them when they're playing out from the back, taking goal kicks short or whatever, or when Shamal George is bowling it out, it's just... That was for me very naive. And you mentioned not taking the game from the scuff of the neck. Ramadani, I thought, was pretty much anonymous for most of that first half anyway. Did go into, I think, a little bit more in the second half. To be fair, I wasn't impressed with Barron in the first half either. Clarkson,
I was impressed by our whole midfield in that first half.
Yeah, I think Clarkson, certainly towards the last sort of 15 minutes, was sort of probably trying to make things happen a little bit more than the other two. But God, it was bloody awful. And I'll mention it as well. The fact none of those centre halves got booked for time wasting, or went getting out dicking about they were doing with the goal kicks and things as well. That was ridiculous.
Well, Jack Fitzwater did get booked with 8 minutes to go. Was that not for time wasting?
I don't think it was, but I can't be certain. I'm sure it was for a foul. Certainly, one of their players got booked for a foul where Matty Kennedy was still breaking. I thought they could have played advantage.
That's right. Yes. No, that is right. Yeah, because I do remember thinking that Nick Walsh could have actually just let us play on instead of pulling that back for the foul. Now, obviously, there was some kind of controversy around the penalties where Connor Barron never got booked, Jason Holt got booked, but then Fitzwater never got booked for conceding it. Now, had he been booked, which I'm not actually sure the rules, if he should have been booked. Again, if someone wants to let us know the rules, because if we don't know, I'm pretty sure the refs don't know themselves. But had he been booked for that incident, Livingston would have then had to play the last 10, probably verging on 15, given the length of stoppage time we saw last night with 10 men. But we could have probably still been playing just now and still struggled to find that second goal the way things were going last night.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, it was a bizarre one. I think maybe the Holt one maybe gets booked because of the distance the ball's travelled, and I suppose the Barron's one, it's natural instinct. But it seems to just be they're making it up as they sort of go along. And then with Fitzwater, he's not intentionally handballing it. He's trying to hold off Miovski, he just hits his arm. Bizarre, but no. On a whole, I think Livingston absolutely deserved it because towards sort of the end, I think we did quite well for most of it in terms of trying to still play football, but then sort of a few minutes before added time, we just started throwing the kitchen sink at it and lobbing the ball into the box, which just played into their hands. Probably should have just tried to stick to the task rather than, lumping it into Fitzwater and Obalai and whoever else they had in there too, which it's just their meat and drink, really, isn't it? Heading balls away from the 18-yard box.
Yeah, it really is. A comment in here from Lee Seymour saying, "Are we getting just sick of the manager saying we'll learn from not getting out the traps quicker? This excuse doesn't cut it for me." I'm probably getting more sick of some of the things he comes out in the press and saying, we'll learn from it. It's the same about we'll fix the defense. It'll be an easy fix. We're not learning. It's the same week in, week out. We never learn. And it's going to be the downfall of us this season if we don't learn from these mistakes. let's hope a trip to America helps, because it, apart from a box ticking exercise for a few sponsors, it seems a bit pointless. But no, there we go.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. But I don't know. I feel like last night, his post-match press conference was, I think, honest and fair. To be honest, I don't think we've. I think that's probably the worst we've started a game, other than against Celtic at Parkhead.
Motherwell, I know they didn't score against us, but I mean, it's
Yeah,
pretty
I think
atrocious.
I think that was the worst because Livingston. I think that was the worst, and giving them up 2 goals as well early on just doesn't help. But I don't know. I mean, I think Jim Goodwin's got a lot of work to do. It's certainly not going to be just a month off. I think he's going to be a very busy man over the winter break, and hopefully making some early moves on some defenders. That would be fantastic. I don't know. 5 months with that. Sorry, Kaiser. Goodwin's had 5 months with that players now. How much longer does he need? Pretty fair.
January transfer window.
That's pretty fair, yeah. But at the same time, given the fucking mess we were last season, I don't know if it's going to be instant like that. I would still like more consistency, but I don't think we're going to be the finished article. Maybe it's until the back end of the season, and hopefully that's when things come together for the running. But I don't know. It's
I think
it's baffling, this, isn't it?
I think given the fact that fans can see what the problem is just now, I hope that the manager, the recruitment team can see the same issues, and we address it promptly in January. We're not dragging our heels, but we'll hear in the middle of January that it's a difficult window to deal in, and we're working on things in the background, and we'll sign somebody on loan from League Two on that deadline day, I'm sure. But another thing from last night, though, Callum, was it was probably one of our best performances of the season over an hour. Some of the attacking play was really good. I've seen a lot of people say there's a lot of positives to take from the game in terms of the way we played going forward. But part of me, and I know Johnny Main, if he's tuning in, he might not be tuning in live just now, is definitely of this opinion. It doesn't matter because we didn't come away with anything. And it's an even bigger problem when you're gifting the opposition a 2-0 head start. But can you see why people are taking some positives from last night?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I tweet that we absolutely suck, just mainly in that we couldn't take our chances, and we just gifted them a 2-goal head start. But we will absolutely play worse than that and still win games. Probably that St Johnstone game away where we won 1-0 from Leighton Clarkson's brilliance from the free kick. We probably played worse in that game and still came away with the 3 points against, not great in the league, but look at how St Johnstone are performing now. A decent side. We had plenty of chances. I think even though we gifted them the 2-goal head start, we absolutely still could have won and probably won comfortably in the end. Especially if we score that penalty, going in at half time, 2-1 down, different game totally. But even discounting the penalty, we still had plenty of chances. Play like that on Saturday and we'll wipe the floor with Dundee United. Well, if we play like we did for the last hour, not the first half an hour.
Yeah, and I like this point from Mark Leslie. I'm not sure if the first sentence is aimed at anybody in particular on this podcast. Not looking at you, Callum, but he says, I do think we get carried away sometimes. We were 10th last season. I think it will take time to get everything sorted and be back to where we should be. I think we just need to be a bit patient. Fair point, but patience and Aberdonians, especially Aberdeen fans, are two things that often don't go hand in hand, and I know I'm very much about that.
Yeah, I do agree though with him. I think if it's still going on like this though in 2 or 3 months' time, where we can barely win a throw-in away from home, let alone the 3 points, then we will be in a bit of a sticky spot. But win against Dundee United, go into the break, hopefully in the third, depending on results tonight, obviously. Then I think we're still in a good spot with that semi-final coming up. But I will be worried if we've not resurrected sort of some of the defence's mistakes and there's not irons in the fire ahead about defenders going into those, certainly those first two games when we come back as well.
Yeah. Another interesting point just before we go into the Dundee United game. Kelrose for me isn't any better than Joe Lewis. In fact, Lewis is better, certainly at cross balls.
I think people are forgetting how bad Joe Lewis was at times before Kelrose came in.
See, on that though, I do think last season, I know there's a lot of stats around Joe Lewis's shot stopping, but he wasn't helped by the atrocious defence.
I know,
last
but it
season.
just wasn't even just the stats though. Think about some of the howlers he had as well, and I think maybe we're romanticising him a little bit about how he was when he first came in. Certainly in recent times before Kelrose came in, he wasn't
Mhm.
at his best as he had been. Whether that was just dip in form or whatever, I don't know. But to be fair, at the same time, perhaps Kelrose has to be better than what I think about it. But I think it's sort of 6 and half a dozen really between the two. But I like Joe. He seems nice. I'll give him that much.
Yeah. Right. So attention then turns to Saturday night football. I think the first time I can certainly remember, maybe since we played Hibs a good few years ago. I want to say at Tawdry we were wearing a black and gold kit.
Wow.
I won't say AFAB were our sponsor. You were probably just out of nappies at that point. That's how long ago it was. Dundee United make the visit up north. It's a change of us going there on a Saturday night to Dundee. Hopefully, it means there's a change in fortune in terms of the results, because certainly Saturday night football has not been favourable for the Dons. Dundee United currently in action against Derek McInnes' Kilmarnock. We're recording this live, of course, on Thursday evening. The game is 30 minutes old, and Dundee United find themselves 3-0 up Callum against Kilmarnock. Kieran Freeman, Jamie McGrath, and Glenn Middleton all on the score sheet. So we'll be looking for a reaction, I'm sure, once again. But Dundee United, certainly by the sounds of it, are coming up absolutely flying.
That's not the news I wanted to hear at all. Especially given how we defended, and they've scored 3 already inside half an hour against Kilmarnock. Maybe their defence not much better, or maybe even worse than ours, which is quite the miracle. But no, their confidence will be high, and not only from that game, but also given how easily they demolished us at Tannadice. So that combined with the Saturday night football not being our friend, not confident, now. But if we play like we did in the last hour, then we should still win. We should keyword should.
I suppose we're at home, so that and we're not playing Motherwell, so that should mean that we win by 2 goals. But
Yeah.
after what we saw last night, what do you do in terms of that starting 11 going into the game against Dundee United? Does Hayden Coulson come back in at left back? Does Ross McCrory even feature in the starting 11 for you this weekend?
I don't know. I would like to see us maybe go back to the 4, but I would say that the 5 back or 3 back, whatever, has worked at home. So it'll be an interesting one. I think if we do go to the 4, then I'd like to see McCrory in the midfield rather than dropped, which I just don't think is going to happen anyway. I think he'll be in the starting 11 one way or the other. It'll be an interesting one, but I'd like to see Jack McKenzie keep his spot, because I think he's actually been pretty good as of late. I'd still like to see us go with Duka Miovski, though, together, rather than dropping one of them.
Yeah, I mean, if you're dropping one, are you saying then Christian Ramirez is coming in?
I don't think they will. I don't think he will. We can't hear you quite
No,
as
but
well.
as I'm saying, though, I'm more meaning if you're dropping one of Duke or Majowski, you're not just going with one up top.
Oh, I think it would be just one up top, and then Vinny or Mike Kennedy would come in.
No, I think
you're sounding a little muffled, Glenn, by the way.
Yeah, my laptop was away to die, so I think my settings have changed slightly. One thing I suppose on on the starting 11, obviously.
Around Ross McCrory, do you think Matty Kennedy comes in for him and we revert to the same defensive shape we showed in that second half?
Maybe, but I don't think. I don't think. I think McCrory would then go into the midfield, and maybe Clarkson or Barron comes out. I don't think McCrory will be dropped entirely.
No.
No, I think Kennedy probably would come in, given his performances, be it in the middle of the park or out wide, because I think he caused Livingston a lot of problems when he came on, and certainly looks one of the ones with more desire as well. So I think it'll be interesting. I presume, all having saying all this, I feel like we're probably just going to go with the exact same nonsense that we did at Livingston.
Yeah, but I just can't help but feel he will change left back, and I do just wonder about that position of Ross McCrory, given the bomb scare sort of performance he put in last night. But we'll maybe put it down to the pitch. I don't know if you and Co are still tuning in or not, but I suppose another thing is obviously we saw a big travelling support from Hibs. I fully expect Dundee United to do the same. I think we saw a nice raucous atmosphere last Friday at Pittodrie under the lights. I'm pretty much sure we'll see the same. Vinny said pre-match at Tannadice that the players would thrive under the atmosphere in those sort of occasions. Obviously, that was slightly different being away from home. We've seen them thrive on the atmosphere at home this season. Do you expect us to continue kind of home comforts this season and get back to winning ways, or are you really kind of expecting an emphatic performance after what we saw last night?
I'm expecting us to win. I'm not sure if it'll be quite as comfortable as we'd maybe like, given Dundee United winning tonight comfortably and how they dispatched us at Tannadice. But I expect us to win, and I expect us to be back amongst the goals. However, I still don't think we'll keep them all out. We're bound to concede. If I'm going to put a prediction on it, I'm going to say 4-2, Glenn, just so you know. What about you?
Nice. I might stick with my 3-1 again.
Okay, I respect that.
And I see that St Johnstone have gone 1-0 up in Paisley, so there's already my stat about St Mirren's imperious home form looking ropey already, but also helping us in our case for third place as well, but fully tightening up that middle of the table between third and ninth if that result stays the same there. I suppose on Dundee United as well, currently, as we said, 3-0 up, 35 minutes into their game against Kilmarnock. Things haven't exactly been going well for them overall this season. How do you expect them to start the game at Pittodrie? Do you think they'll come out and have a go? Because when I spoke to Michael for the Hibs preview, he thought, Hibs would kind of stick to their game plan and do as they usually do. And in a way, I almost felt that led to their downfall after we took the lead. Do you think United might try and sit in and frustrate us?
I think so, because at times, that's certainly worked. As we look at how Livingston performed in the last hour as well, I think that benefited them. I think they've kind of got to, because if they come out open, although it gives them more of a chance of scoring, then we can be very clinical at times. Well, I mean, look at how much we took our chances against Hibs. Certainly at home, I think certainly in the second half, shooting towards the red shed. Saturday night should be a good atmosphere. I think if they come out and try and go hell for leather, it could be ugly for them to a degree.
Yeah, I suppose though they'll be encouraged by in parts from their last away performance, albeit it did end in defeat. But going to Celtic Park and taking 2 off of Celtic and going within minutes of taking what would have been a very impressive point at Parkhead, only for their arse to collapse. Once doing so, will they take positives from that? They've turned in a respectable, by all accounts, performance at Parkhead, and then have started like a house on fire against Kilmarnock tonight. Other than when they played us at Tannadice, they certainly at home they've struggled. So they'll be really buoyed by what they've done tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, nearly taking a point So they'll be full of confidence. I think they'll probably try and be stuffy and maybe look to hit us on the break, which we can be susceptible to as well. But as Kaiser's just said, Dundee United has a weak defence just like ourselves, which is fair. I don't think that's why I'm saying I don't think it'll be a cagey tight affair. I think it might be. United will sit in and let us fanny about. Jeff Moran, brilliant. I think I don't think they can afford to sit in and make it difficult.
Because I think when we showed last night what happened,
they need to
when Livingston. Yeah, I think Livingston showed what happened last night. If you sit in and let, to quote Jeff, if you let us fanny about, because that's certainly what we did last night at times, we are going to create chances, and we have been doing so at home. And I think you need to hope that our clinical finishing is on show on Saturday night. Otherwise, it'll be another frustrating 90 minutes for us.
Yeah, I mean, any 90 minutes with Aberdeen could be potentially frustrating, really, couldn't it?
Yeah, it could be. But I think, given, as I said, semi-final tickets going on sale, by all accounts, it seems to be next week. The fact that we're going to have a month without club football, it would be really nice to tie us over for a month, going into that break with 3 points to celebrate and have a bit of positivity on this show before we take a wee break during the World Cup.
Absolutely. I think everyone will feel a lot better about us if we do go in after a good win, hopefully a good performance into this break, and hopefully still sitting third. I think Aberdeen will be a lot happier place than if we do, suffer a defeat and then have to play the two ugly sisters immediately after the break.
Yeah, exactly. Jim Goodwin obviously calling Aberdeen an emotional city. We've went through most of the emotions last night. It would be good to have some positive emotions going into that World Cup break, especially with the run of fixtures we've got in December. Could be a tough December for us, especially as we've seen our away form this season. But we will, of course, be back at some point next week with a look back at the Dundee United game, and also kind of a look back at the season so far, where we kind of rate how we've been probably through all parts of the team. We're not really going to get any solid plans on how we're going to structure the episode. If you haven't worked out, we don't really follow any specific structure on this show. We just do as we please and try and fit it into a decent time frame for you all, especially during these lives. Pretty good going tonight, Callum, with no notes as well.
I think so. We did all right in an hour as well. Pretty good.
Yeah, it is. It is pretty good. We've done our predictions as well, so we've covered that basis as well. Mark Leslie, are we doing a quiz every week to get us through the break? Well, we could maybe think of something. We've got this live format. We've got a platform that could just chuck something together. I'm sure there'll be some cheating going on if we did a quiz, though. But we will, of course, be back, Callum, next week looking at the Dundee United game. And as we said, we will look back at the season so far and maybe kind of take a look ahead to December briefly. But thank you very much to all of you who have joined us tonight on the live. There's been a lot of you interacting in the comments with each other, with us on the show as well. We do really appreciate the support on the live episodes. It generates some content as well when we don't have any notes, creates talking points. So thank you to all of you. If you have not done so and been tuning in, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you're not a subscriber. If you're listening back on audio as well, hit that subscribe button. Leave us a like, review, whatever. Thank you very much. Until next time. Come on, you Reds.
Had to do it, didn't you?